7. In section 7, we basically will talk about Vygotsky and the sociocultural approach. I would say that Vygotsky's theory is just very similar to Piaget, um, but it is just more chill because like it doesn't have that kind of a specific stage for each age range. For example, we wouldn't say that from age 0 to age 2, this is gonna happen. No, this is not the case in Vygotsky. He's just the way he's just looking at child development and human development, it just more broadly. And for example, he would say that yes, error A, not B gonna happen, for example, in childhood, but he wouldn't actually frame specific age range for that kind of coincidence or development in children. Or, for example, he also believes that we have object permanency in children, but he wouldn't say that, yes, it's going to happen, for example, by age 7 months until 12 months. No, he just says that, yes, it's going to happen sometimes in childhood. It is just so broad. Another point is he actually considered a major role for cultural and environmental elements. He believes that children, again, they are active. He also believes that children are going to interact with their environment. However, he believes that culture, family, and neighborhood and peers, they would impact children a lot. And they are the main differences between Vygotsky and Piaget. So first of all, there is not a specific stage in Vygotsky. Everything is just more broader than Piaget. And number 2 is the role of culture and environment in Vygotsky's theory. He also considered like 3 major themes in his perspective. For example, like you can see here, number 1 is cultural historical, number 2 is social origins of mental development, and the last one is thought and action, which can be mediated by cultural tools and artifacts. I would suggest everyone to go back and check the textbook because they are very important, like they are fundamental in Vygotsky's perspective. So read about them. So now let's talk about temporal context. We have 4 of them in Vygotsky's theory. For example, we have ontogenetic development, which is basically all about developmental span of an individual. For example, comparing puberty to younger age or maybe older age. So it's going to be the whole idea of ontogenetic development. It is all about lifespan. Then we have microgenetic development, which is like you can tell, right? It is microgenetic, which means like moment to moment learning on a specific task. Another one is phylogenetic development, which is related to the species and evolution. And the last one is, again, cultural, historical development, legacy of various times. It's very interesting because like if we would go back and look at ourselves, we can see we are really culturally impacted. Whether we are actually coming from a specific region or not, there are going to be some elements from, let's say, from our great grandparents that actually passed to us. So they are very impactful, very important that we picked up from our culture and like our ethnicity and our history. Again, read about them in your book. There are going to be some examples that can help you to understand that better. I'm actually mentioning them broadly here because I don't want to make the lecture boring, but they are so important. And they might be, I mean, there might be some questions either in your quiz or exam based on Vygotsky's themes and these 4 contexts. So, social origins of thought. Number 1, I actually highlighted that because it is very important wherever you go, either in developmental psychology or education psychology, or let's say child psychology, we're gonna hear about zone of proximal development or ZPD. I bet you know that from your general psychology because I remember that I taught that in my course last year. But ZPD is basically saying that a child cannot accomplish on their own and they need adults or at least a knowledgeable peers who could actually supervise them and guide them to understand the task. For example, just imagine an easy task like putting jam on top of a bread and adding peanut butter, or I don't know, like the other way. I'm not really a big fan of jam and peanut butter. But like children on their own, they cannot do that. They have to actually watch you as an adult or as a sibling or as a mom, and they can just pick up the task. And next time you can just see them to do that by themselves. The whole idea of that, or let's say riding a bike, they cannot do that on their own, or like swimming, they cannot do that on their own. But after watching adults or siblings, or let's say some knowledgeable peers, they can understand the task. So the whole idea of that is ZPD. And honestly, I'm a big fan of this because I believe that you have to actually have some guidance in your life to actually learn about this stuff. So ZPD is very important in children's development, and I would say that in adults' development as well. Uh, Another one, which is also important, is scaffolding, which is just adjusting the level of assistance in response to the child's performance. And the last one is guided participation, which means that young children become more competent by participating in activities under the supervisions of experienced others. Again, we have ZPD here, but one important point, the task shouldn't be too easy and the task shouldn't be too hard. It should be just right. What do I mean here? Okay, just imagine I cannot teach riding a bike to 8 months old, right? Because basically they cannot even walk. So how I can just teach them? Or I cannot teach mental transformation, or let's say numeracy to 1 year old because they are not ready. But I can actually teach them to just say that, let's say, one apple, or the idea of number one. The task is just right for age one. However, for age two, maybe I could teach them number two, or maybe I could just teach them the last number after counting gonna be the total amount of items that you have on the table. For example, if you would just have 3 apples and you would say that 1, 2, 3, the last number gonna be the total amount of apples on the table. This is the idea of numeracy. But yeah, it's gonna be the idea of ZPD as well. And the important element of the task should be just right.